My favorite part of being an author is just spending time with my characters when I first start writing. I really I really get into that. I love meeting my characters and seeing where they go. It's magical. Welcome to Write About Everything. I'm author Karolyn Kearney, and I write stories for early readers through adults. I started this podcast because I really love the conversations that take place before and after the final draft. This is where we explore the courage to begin, the creativity to continue, and the reinvention that often surprises us along the way. Hi, so last time I had my podcast, I featured author Lisa Galdos, who writes amazing children's books. And this time I thought I'm going to feature somebody else who would not expect to be on this podcast as a guest, which is me. So I thought it would be fun to share a little bit about me and my background and my journey. Anyway, I'm author Karolyn Kearney, and I will answer the top questions that I come across when I'm out and about. People ask me things, and the questions that I like to ask other authors. First of all, do I have any favorite authors? I have lots of favorite authors. I always heard that the best writers are typically the best readers. I'm not saying the best writer by far at all. I'm always learning, but I will say I'm one of the best readers because I devour reading. I'll take notes in the pages. Yeah, I like to buy my books, hard copies, because I like to write in them. If there's a scene or if there's a sentence or something that really grabs me, I like to highlight it or circle it and kind of think about what it is about that sentence or that scene that really drew me in. It's kind of like I use it as a learning tool. So I would say over the course of a year, I probably read at least a couple hundred books. Lately, my favorite ones are, oh, let's see. Um, The Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah Maas. She's written several books in the fantasy genre, and she's amazing. I didn't think I would be into fantasy stories, but her stories really engaged me. Her characters drew me in, and I really, really enjoy her books. Another would be um, Frida McFadden. I love her writing. I love her characters. She really knows how to write. Um, she has quite a few books out. And the one I just finished was called The Boyfriend. It was really good. So I'm going to suggest her as well as if you need some new authors you want to read. Suzanne Collins. Yeah, I love The Hunger Games. I read the whole trilogy of that and really enjoyed her imagination. And she goes to places I don't know how she does it, but her writing is phenomenal and her characters are just so multi-layered. And also Lisa Jewell. I do like Lisa Jewell. Um, I think the last novel I read of hers was None of This Is True or something like that. She's got quite a few books out. I really enjoy her writing as well. So typically, as I mentioned, I love to purchase books and then I write in them, and then I keep them for quite a while, if not forever. Sometimes I do loan them out to people, not expecting to get them back because I want other people to pass them on and get read. So, but also I love audiobooks as well, especially when I'm cleaning or doing some task that I really don't want to do. It's so wonderful to be able to listen to a story and get lost in that world. Um, the second question would be, am I published? Yes, yeah, I'm published. I have two books, middle grade fiction that were traditionally published with a traditional publisher who basically accepted my manuscript, assigned an editor to me, and just oversaw everything pretty much. So I am traditionally published. My two stories, one of them is called Madison is Possibly, Probably, Positively Guilty. And then the second one is called How to Win Back Your Bestie. So those are my two books through a publisher. And then I self-publish too, because I'm too impatient to wait for my books to come out. With a traditional publisher, it's not unusual to wait quite a few months, up to 18 months, maybe longer. It's a long journey. And the first two times it was hard for me to wait. But it was also very exciting to be assigned a professional editor who's excited about moving your story to um, the next level, and also eventually to be able to pick a book cover artist. Again, that's really fun. And then to work with these people. So publishing with the traditional publisher is a lot of fun. But my books that I have self-published are a series for early readers, featuring a character who's 7. His name is Caden. And the first book was about Caden rescuing a cat and then having to convince his mom to let him keep it. The second of the series was about Caden wanting to start his very own musical band. I can remember when I was a kid wanting to do that as well. I played the guitar, I played the violin. I really wanted my own band. But in any case, Caden wants a musical band. He needs an instrument and he needs people. So that's what that story is about. And then the third one is called Caden and the Great Sleepover Do-Over, because the first sleepover didn't go quite as well as he wanted, so he decides on a second. In addition to those three, I have self-published 2 short story collections. Both are humorous. At least I think they are. um, so the first one that came out a couple years ago was called Ralph the Real Estate Guy. And it features a real estate agent who went into the business after he retired from his job. And despite not having a lot of experience, he's completely convinced that he is the best agent in the world. So that is the first collection. And then the second collection of short stories is called Good Responsible People. And it's basically about a neighborhood. And one particular neighbor who feels like in order to if you do the right thing, you're a good responsible person. And he likes to remind everybody of that you need to be a good responsible person. And although he's not always. So anyway, those are the books that I have had published. And I'm now currently working on a couple more young adult books. So when I say young adult, they're a crossover from middle grade to young adult. And one is completely finished. It's gone through professional editing. It's done. And now I need to decide what to do with it. Should I submit it to agents and publishers? Should I self-publish it? So I'm kind of waiting to see where that goes and what comes to me on that one. And then the second one is another young adult novel. The second one, I have run into a couple writing blocks, which I'm going to address how I handle those, but that's very common. It's nothing to get too concerned about. There's ways to break it. Everybody's experienced it. It can be scary, but you can get through it. And I will share with you my ways, how I deal with that here soon. So in addition to the books, I also have a master's in English and creative writing from Southern New Hampshire University. Fantastic program. When I decided several years ago to get a master's degree in writing, I did lots of research, lots and lots of research. And there's a lot of fantastic institutions out there where you can get an MFA or an MA. And after considerable time, I decided on Southern New Hampshire University, and I'm really glad I did because it was a phenomenal program. I absolutely loved every one of my professors. They really cared about the writing process, the journey, and everything that goes into it. So besides doing a lot of writing, I learned about literary theory, which was very interesting. And I really just embraced the whole process and the whole program. And if you are thinking of getting a degree, a bachelor's, associate's, master's, whatever, in writing or creative writing, do your homework and take your time and pick the program that you think is the right fit for you. I had enrolled in another program right before Southern New Hampshire, and I dropped out 6 weeks later because I realized quickly it was not a good fit for me. So I did drop out. And then several months later, I enrolled at Southern New Hampshire University. So do your homework if you are interested in going that route. And I do not regret it at all. Truly thought it was worthwhile. So that's some of my professional background and experience. Um, so writing slump, I mentioned that. Everybody who writes eventually runs into a slump or experiences writer's block. It's just part of it. So what I do, because it happens to me, happens to everybody, but what I do is, first of all, I take a step back. I will go through my story and I'll pick out a scene. And I will spend probably several days dissecting it. Um, so I'll rewrite it. I'll use different um, aspects, um, different elements to make it different. Uh, Literary techniques. I'll use the five senses to try to make it more visual. So I'll spend a lot of time just dissecting a scene and rewriting it several times, several ways. And that kind of takes me away from that block and helps me look at my story from a different angle. So that's one thing I do. Another thing I might do is take one of my minor characters and invite that character to have a conversation with me. So what I'll do is sit down with this character and basically do a deep dive into who this character is, what they like, what they dislike about the story, if they're angry about something, if they're happy about something, where do they see the story going, and what is their background? What are their secrets? So I'll spend a week off and on getting together with my minor character and figuring out who they really are. And sometimes it's really awesome. This minor character wants to be the big guy, wants to be the protagonist, the main character. And there's been a few times when they almost succeeded in becoming the main character because they were far more interesting and multi-layered than I initially thought. So yeah, that's the second thing I like to do is have a conversation or two with some of my minor characters. Okay. And then last, when I have a slump, what I do is I take 1 week, no more than that, away from my story, and I will do research. I will research things like writers' conferences, what's going on, where are there some, where could I go to attend one, uh, local workshops or online workshops. I love to search for those. Podcast. enjoy listening to podcasts by writing coaches and others. And if there's a writers group that I can get to, I might go there and just hang out and listen. So I will get away from the writing part and go explore other avenues of writing. And then in about a week, I'll go back to my writing. And then usually by that time, things start to unravel and I know what I'm doing. So that's some of my ideas. Um, so a question that I was asked recently at a um, writing, what do you call it? Fair, book fair. It was a book fair. Somebody came over and they asked me, "Do you remember the first story you ever wrote?" Yeah, I do actually. I do. I think probably most people do remember that first one. It's kind of special. So the first story I ever wrote was called "Who I Would Invite for Thanksgiving Dinner," and it was actually written for a contest many years ago. It was the city held where I grew up held a contest with this who you would invite for Thanksgiving dinner. It was open to anybody. You could be 5 years old. You could submit a story. You could be 105. It was all over, which was really cool. So there were 5 winners that were selected. And surprise, I happened to be the first winner, which was really, really cool because it would say your name and your age. And I was 12. So mine said age 12. And then everybody else after me was like 40s, 50s, or maybe a 60-year-old. And I was the only one at age 12. Uh, so that was I wasn't really fun. I wasn't expecting to win at all. And I think one reason why I possibly did win is because I decided that my guests were going to be people who are no longer with us. And I think everybody else invited living people. I didn't. I invited dead people to my Thanksgiving dinner, and I just had fun with it. And I didn't care about winning. I didn't care about technique. I didn't care about any of that. I just cared about writing the story about my 3 guests who I invited to my Thanksgiving dinner and just to have fun with it. And I will say that if you approach your writing like that with really no expectations of getting it published, no expectations of winning a contest or whatever. If you go into it with that mindset, it relieves so much pressure. And you're going to find that you write a lot more freely because really the only person that you need to please is you. It's your story. These are your babies. So please yourself. So the 3 guests that I invited to my Thanksgiving dinner was Edgar Allan Poe. He's number 1 because we were studying Edgar Allan Poe in school, and I thought his stories were super gripping. The Raven, that was my favorite. Read it over and over and over, and I couldn't believe somebody could come up with this story. And I think the second one I really liked was called The Telltale Heart. I think that was the title, something like that, about a beating heart. That was really cool too. So definitely I had to invite Edgar Allan Poe. And then my second guest was Benjamin Franklin. I invited him, and I wasn't sure he would be able to come, but I did invite him because we had studied him in school. We were studying like inventors, right? And I found out that he actually invented a musical instrument made out of, I think, glass bowls. They were spinning glass bowls, and he invented this instrument out of these spinning glass bowls, and they were so good. They were so cool that Beethoven and Mozart used them in their music. Can you believe that? So Benjamin Franklin invented a musical instrument that was actually used in music created by Beethoven and I believe it was Mozart. Yeah, they wrote music for that instrument. I thought, well, that is really cool. I had no idea. So naturally, I invited Benjamin Franklin, right? Because I was hoping he would bring these spinning glass bowls with him and do a demonstration. And then last, I invited, I believe it was my grandfather. Now, the third guest, I kept vacillating and going back and forth, but I think I did settle on my grandfather. It's been many years ago when I wrote this, by the way. So, but yeah, he was no longer with us, and I had seen photos of him, kind of like sitting on a couch holding my older brother when my brother was a child, and I thought, wow, at least, my brother got to meet him somewhat. I sure wish I could have. So I invited him. And I will tell you that of those three guests, all of them came. So that was the first story I ever wrote, who I would invite to Thanksgiving dinner. And the prize was dinner to a very nice restaurant in downtown Omaha, Nebraska. So, yeah, that was nice because my family didn't really go out to eat. So we got treated to a really nice dinner, and that made it all worthwhile. So that was my first story. Um, a question that I like to ask other authors when I do meet them, or if I ever like have them on my podcast, is what's your favorite part of being an author? So most authors might say my favorite part is seeing my book in a bookstore or seeing my book online or seeing somebody carrying my book from somewhere from a store and knowing that they bought it. That's cool. That's all cool stuff. But my favorite part of being an author is just spending time with my characters when I first start writing. I really I really get into that. I love meeting my characters and seeing where they go. It's magical. I will tell you this. And if you're a writer, author, whatever, and you've written things, you know what I'm talking about. You're writing away on your computer, you're making your coffee, and then before you know it, 2 hours have passed and you blink and you think, what did I just write? Your characters basically take over. They're writing, you're just typing their stuff into the computer. That is what's truly magical, is when that happens. And um, that is the ideal situation for me, is to have my characters do the hard work and they do the writing. If I come to a point where I'm totally not, things are just dragging, it's like my fingers are cement trying to type in things. If it gets to that point, I step away because things should flow easily, naturally. That is the goal. So I'll step away if that happens, come back, and I hope things go a lot more smoothly. So yeah, that's my favorite part of being an author, is just the creating and the writing and seeing where my story takes me. So I will add that something about outlines, because if you've done any writing, you've heard about outlines. Do I do them? No, I don't. I don't use outlines. I kind of wish I could, but the way my brain is wired, I just can't do it. It's too restrictive. Yes, I know outlines can be flexible. I know that. That's what they tell me. But just sitting down and outlining what's going on, how things are going to happen, who's going to be in this chapter or whatever, too much work for me. Too much. I'm one of these. I hate to say I'm one of those pantsers. I fly by my pants with my writing. I just sit down with a vague idea and I just write, and I hope that at the end of the day it works out. I will say that personally, I have never written myself into a corner, which is always a concern if you don't have an outline. So thankfully, I have not had that happen. I always manage to get through the story, and I might go through 3 or 4 rounds of heavy editing where I change things around a lot, rewrite chapters, eliminate characters, add new characters. I may go through that 3 or 4 times before it's completely done. But yeah, I don't like rules when it comes to writing at all. So don't like rules. I know they exist. If you go to any writers group for any length of time to bring your stories to be critiqued, you're going to hear all about rules. What you should be doing, what you shouldn't be doing from other people just like you. They're all writers. There may be some that are beginning writers, or maybe some that are published and are really professional. It may be all over the board. They're all going to have their own thoughts and ideas and opinions about your writing. But anyway, I'm not into rules. And I think that if your story works, it works. And if you use beta readers, which I have used, if it works for them and they get it and they enjoy it, which is the ultimate goal, I want people to read my work and think, yeah, that's funny. Or, yeah, I can't believe this. I want people to get engaged. And if there are rules in my writing that got broken, for example, like the use of adjectives, adverbs, things like that, those are kind of frowned upon, especially adjectives in writing. But if you read any bestsellers, you're going to see them in there. They're in there. Um, Stephen King wrote a book called On Writing, and it's phenomenal. Seriously, I think I have 2 copies because the first copy I wrote all kinds of stuff through the whole book. Half the book is his autobiography. It talks about his life when he was young and the process of getting into his field. And then the other part of the book has to do with craft. And the first copy I wrote all over the book to the point where I thought I need a fresh, clean copy when I reread this. So I bought a second copy a year later, read it again, and made a ton more notes and put questions in there like he's going to answer my questions right. But read it. It's a very good book, and he makes some good points, and I learned some things from him, but he's very anti um, using adjectives, whereas I'm okay with them sparingly, especially if it brings a new level to the writing. So, but anyway, just be aware that if you go to a writer's group, there are going to be people who totally disagree with what you're doing, and they're going to point out your flaws and things like that. But don't let that discourage you. And if you are in a group where you leave the group feeling discouraged, disgusted, disillusioned, and on the verge of quitting writing altogether, then go find another group, because that's not the purpose of a writer's group or critique group. I have started my own throughout the years. I've gone to many critique groups, many, many, many. And the purpose is to help you become a stronger, better writer. Yes, that does involve critiquing your work. But there's a difference between a critique that helps you and a critique that destroys you. You want to go to the groups where the critique helps you. When people don't agree with something or they don't like something, they actually explain why it's not working for them. They stand behind their comments. Whether it's a favorable comment or not so favorable, they can explain to you why they feel the way they feel and possibly give you some ideas on how you might change things without taking over your story. I have many friends who are writers, and a new writer friend of mine texted me a while ago and said she started going to this writers group and she's going to quit writing because she's horrible. She's a horrible writer. They told her. They told her that she's horrible. So she is going to quit writing. No, I told her, stop going to that group, find a new group, because if you ever leave feeling that way, again, it's not the right group of people. Writers should build one another up and be excited for their successes and not break people down. So that's just my thought on writers groups. Right now, I don't do any writer groups, probably because I just don't seem to have time to devote to doing it. But I would like to go back to one again eventually because there is a lot of benefits to being in a good, positive group. Um, so that's my favorite part of being a writer again is the actual writing and getting lost in my writing. And the last question would be a question that I think is kind of interesting. Who is my favorite character? I could say, oh, every character is my favorite character. And no, that's not true. Some of my characters, I don't like them. They decided they wanted to be in my story, and I really couldn't stop them. So, but I don't like them. Um, of all my characters so far, my favorite character is Ralph Daly. He is the protagonist. He's the main character in my Ralph the Real Estate Guy short story collection, which features, I don't know, 15, 20 some stories, all based on the life of Ralph Daly, also known as Ralph the Real Estate Guy. I started writing these short stories, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15 years ago. I have all kinds of stories I started writing years and years and years ago. And through the years, I would dig them up, revise them, put them back away, add to them. So this Ralph collection is based on some very old stories from like 15 years ago, and then some new stories from just 2 or 3 years ago. So the character has never changed. He is a somewhat grumpy, somewhat unlikable real estate agent. He got into real estate after he retired, and within a short time, he became convinced that he is the world's best real estate agent. And you know why? It's not because he has sold a lot of houses, because he hasn't. It's not because he's the oldest agent in his office and thus he thinks he's the most experienced and skilled. Nope, that's not it. He thinks he's the world's best real estate agent because he has his very own bus bench sign. Has his picture on it. It says Ralph the Real Estate Guy. Because of that, he thinks he is the ultimate. So he is my favorite character. And I have to say that in some of the stories, I hate him. Other parts of the stories, I love him. I think he means well, but he is a real, genuine person to me. And I love him. So he's my favorite character. That's of the characters that I've written about. And then last, of the characters that I've read, because I do a lot of reading. I thought about this before I got on here, and I thought, okay, I've read tons of books. I remember tons of characters. I write notes about the characters in these different books. But of all the books that I have read, I would say my favorite character is from this book. First of all, let me show you a couple of my favorite books. And favorite books do not have to be recent books, obviously. Um, I don't know if you're old enough, like me. Uh, Five Little Peppers and How They Grew. This was published in 1963, and it is an old book. I got it. The parts are falling out of it. The spine is unfortunately broken. I got this many, many years ago, and it has followed me from house to house, from city to city. Um, it's been with me since forever. It's just one of those books that I refuse to ever get rid of. When I was young, I read it. This was the only book I had. I think it doesn't say in it, but I believe my grandmother gave it to me. and it was the only book I owned. And I read it over and over and over and over and over and over and for years. So the main character, Polly, is a very strong girl and does what she can to help her family. It's a great book. I love it. 1963 is when it was published. Another book that I liked a lot, another oldie, is this one. Um, as you can see, I have a hairband to keep it together because it's falling apart. Yeah, this one is going to stay with me forever, and one of my kids will inherit it. This is their inheritance. Is this book? Uh, The Shadow of the Lynx by Victoria Holt, published in 1971, I believe. Yeah, I think it was 70, 71, something like that. Yeah. So another story of a young woman who crosses the world, um, and along the way encounters a lot of challenges, joys, sorrows, and realizations of who she is as a woman. So it's a very good story. And I will keep this, as I said, forever. This is in my forever to keep book pile. And then lastly, to get back to one of my favorite character of all time from a published book that's not mine, is this one, Barbara Taylor Bradford, A Woman of Substance. Published, I believe, in I think it was 79, something like that. Barbara Taylor Bradford wrote several books. I think this might have been one of her first ones because she had a bunch of spin-off books based on the characters from this book, which I wish I could do that. I think that's a great idea. I might do that, actually. I think it's a great idea if you have some strong minor characters that are calling out to you to, hey, feature me in a book. I want to be the protagonist. Yeah, I think that's cool to do. So, but in any case, I have read several of her books. The first one here to me was Gold. Um, Based on the main character, Emma Hart. She was a very poor young girl from Yorkshire. Her mother had died. Her dad was raising her, and they needed money. So at a young age, I think she was like 10, 12, she had to go work for a wealthy family as a housekeeper. And this was a young girl, and she was managing a huge house with a lot of people in it and doing absolutely everything from sunup till sundown. And her one and only goal in life was to become a woman of financial means. She had laser focus on getting out of her circumstances and becoming her own boss and becoming financially independent. So along the way, we follow her journey um, through an unplanned pregnancy and illness and abuse. Um, she does succeed, which is a good thing, and becomes very powerful, and has the chance at revenge against those who wronged her, but took the high road. And anyway, this is a book that I have read and reread. I just really love this book. I think it was made into a movie many, many years ago. I think I should look and see if I can find it. But of course, movies, they're nothing like the actual book. Um, so yeah, Barbara Taylor Bradford didn't follow all the rules, I can tell you that, but her book, spectacular. So you can break the rules and you can be very successful. It just, does it work? That's the question. So those are my top favorite books of all time. You may wonder why I don't have something more recent than 1979. I think it's because back when when I had these books, when I was younger, um, there weren't, I didn't have access to as many books as we have access to today, thanks to Amazon, Barnes and Noble, other online avenues to buy books, all the bookstores. There's just so many opportunities today to read books. The library, you can check them out remotely. Whereas back when I was younger, I didn't have a lot of choice. There wasn't that many options. So when I did get a book, I inhaled it over and over. Today, I probably read about, I would say right now, maybe 5 books a month, 60 books a year, something like that, 60 books a year. So, and I fly through them most of the time. Sometimes I'll take notes in them and kind of dissect them because I find that to be educational and interesting. So I fly through them for the most part. That's today, but back then, when I got a book like this one, I bought this book. I don't even remember if it might have been $1 or $2. I don't remember, but this is all I had. So I read it and reread it and reread it and read it and read it and reread it. And as time went on and more books became available to me, I would read those. But this one, I think, and this one especially, I didn't have a lot of choices. And so I devoured them. And that's why they really stand out to me. Whereas the 60 books I read a year now, most 99% of them are fantastic. I love them. But if you ask me which of the characters from those 60 books do I remember and like the most, I could probably come up with a couple, but they don't mean as much to me as Emma Hart. And this character, I can't even remember what her name was. Nora. And of course, Polly. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed our little conversation here. And I hope you tune in for my next podcast. The guest is still in the works. I've got some people looking at joining me for my next podcast. Be sure to check out my last one where I featured Lisa Galdos. And anyway, thanks for listening again. Hope you have a great rest of the day, and we'll see you next time. This has been Right About Everything, where we've had honest conversations about courage, creativity, and the craft behind the pages. Whether you're an aspiring writer or a professional author, it's your time to write. So go ahead, write about everything.